Welcome to Psychology Wisdom. In today's video, we're diving into something that's often hard to talk about, but incredibly important for anyone in a relationship. The subtle signs that your partner may no longer be emotionally invested. Sometimes relationships can start to feel off, and you might not even know why. It's not always about big arguments or obvious fights. Instead, it's often about small, gradual shifts in behavior that, over time, can signal a change in how your partner feels. If you've ever felt like something's just not right but couldn't put your finger on it, this video is for you. We'll walk through 10 signs that your partner may have already moved on, even if they haven't said it out loud. By the end of this video, you'll have a clearer understanding of whether those little changes in their behavior are something to worry about, or if they're just a phase. So grab a seat and let's dive into these signs that could be affecting your relationship. When you're in a relationship, it's easy to assume that everything is fine, as long as you don't notice any major issues. However, sometimes the signs of emotional disconnection aren't as obvious as outright arguments or big fights. Instead, they show up in subtle ways, often leaving you feeling confused and uncertain about where you stand with your partner. One of the hardest things to face is realizing that your partner may no longer feel the same way about you, even though they haven't said it out loud. If you found yourself wondering whether your partner is still invested in the relationship, there are certain signs that can help shed light on the situation. These signs may not be immediately glaring, but when put together, they paint a clear picture of emotional detachment. It's important to understand that emotional detachment doesn't always happen suddenly. Often, it's a slow process where one partner starts withdrawing emotionally, gradually pulling away from the connection they once shared. These signs can be heartbreaking to notice because they often come from someone you care about deeply. You may still feel the same way about them, but when they start behaving in ways that indicate they've moved on, it can leave you feeling lost and unsure of what's going on. It's crucial to pay attention to these subtle shifts, not just to protect your heart, but to also gain clarity on what's really happening in the relationship. So what exactly are these signs? How do you know when your partner's feelings have changed without them explicitly saying it? It all comes down to their behavior and emotional availability, or the lack of it. If your partner has stopped making the effort to communicate, show affection, or make plans with you, it might indicate that their emotional connection to you has weakened. These behaviors don't always reflect outright rejection, but they signal that something has shifted. For example, a partner who used to prioritize your texts and calls might suddenly become unresponsive or too busy to keep in touch. They might stop making future plans with you and instead fill their calendar with other commitments or activities that don't involve you. Even when you're together, they might avoid physical contact or intimacy, choosing instead to keep a noticeable distance. This emotional distance can extend to how they interact with you in day-to-day life. They might stop asking about your day, your feelings, or the little details that once mattered to them. Understanding these signs can be difficult, especially when you're still emotionally invested in the relationship. The fact is, when someone is emotionally detached, they may not even realize it themselves at first, or they may avoid addressing the issue because they don't want to hurt you. Either way, the result is the same. The relationship loses the emotional connection that once held it together. Recognizing these behaviors early on can give you the clarity you need to make informed decisions about your relationship. It allows you to see the situation for what it is, rather than holding on to false hope that things will get better on their own. Emotional detachment is not always reversible, but acknowledging it can help you understand where your partner stands and take the necessary steps to protect your own emotional well-being. 1. They no longer prioritize your calls or texts. When someone has already moved on from a relationship, they start to pull away in subtle ways, one of which is by no longer prioritizing your calls or texts. Initially, when the connection was strong, they would respond quickly, eager to communicate and stay in touch. But as feelings fade, these responses become less frequent and less meaningful. At first, you might think they're just busy or have a lot on their plate, but over time, it becomes clear that they're not as invested in the conversation as they once were. They might leave your messages unread for longer periods, or worse, leave you on scene without any explanation. Calls that used to be met with immediate enthusiasm might now go unanswered or be met with excuses. When they do respond, it's often brief, lacking the warmth or excitement you once felt in their messages. For example, you might send a text asking about their day, and instead of a thoughtful response, you get a one-word answer or no reply at all. This behavior is a sign that they're emotionally checked out and no longer making an effort to stay connected. It's a painful but clear indication that their feelings have shifted, even if they haven't verbally expressed it yet. 2. They stop making future plans with you. When someone has emotionally moved on, one of the most telling signs is that they stop making future plans with you. Early in a relationship, planning for the future feels natural, whether it's making weekend plans, talking about vacations, or even imagining where you'll be in the next few months or years. But when feelings begin to fade, they stop involving you in their future. At first, it might be small things like avoiding setting a date for an event months down the line. If you suggest making plans for an upcoming holiday or a special occasion, their responses may be non-committal or vague. Instead of excitement or interest, you might hear things like, "I don't know," "Let's see how things go," or "I'm not sure if I'll be free." For example, if you suggest going on a trip or even attending a wedding together in a few months, they might not take the idea seriously, brushing it off without making any real effort to commit. This lack of enthusiasm shows that they're no longer envisioning a long-term future with you. They may still care, but the thought of a shared future isn't part of their reality anymore. This emotional detachment can be one of the clearest signs they've already moved on. 3. They're always too busy to hang out. When someone is no longer invested in the relationship, they often become too busy to spend time with you. Initially, they might have made an effort to be there for you, whether it was for spontaneous hangouts or scheduled outings. However, as their feelings change, they start using their busy schedule as an excuse to avoid spending time together. You may notice they suddenly have a packed calendar, or that they always have something important going on whenever you suggest meeting up. When you try to make plans, they'll respond with vague answers like, "I have a lot going on this week," or "Maybe next time, I'm swamped." At first, it may seem like just a coincidence, but when this pattern continues, it becomes clear that they're distancing themselves. For example, you might try to make plans for a weekend trip, or even a simple coffee date, but they always have a reason why they can't make it. They might tell you they're caught up with work, family, or other obligations, but the truth is, they've simply stopped prioritizing you. What was once a priority for them now takes a back seat to other aspects of their life, showing that they no longer want to invest the time or energy into the relationship. 4. They avoid physical contact or intimacy. When someone has moved on emotionally, they begin to withdraw physically as well. Physical contact, which was once a natural and comforting part of the relationship, becomes scarce or even non-existent. This avoidance of intimacy can manifest in subtle ways, such as avoiding hand-holding, hugging, or even just sitting close to you. What used to feel like a gesture of closeness and affection now feels like an uncomfortable or unnecessary action for them. Their body language becomes more distant. They may turn away when you try to initiate closeness or pull back when you touch them. They may even avoid eye contact during moments that used to be intimate or personal. When physical affection is met with hesitation or indifference, it's a clear sign that emotional intimacy is also fading. This physical detachment reflects their lack of emotional connection, making it difficult for them to maintain the closeness they once shared with you. As they grow more distant emotionally, they stop seeking out those moments of physical closeness. Instead, they may seem distracted or even uncomfortable when you try to engage physically, highlighting the shift in their feelings. This lack of physical contact can be one of the clearest indicators that they are no longer emotionally invested in the relationship. 5. They start spending more time with other people. When someone has emotionally moved on, they often start prioritizing other people over you. This shift becomes noticeable as they begin spending more time with friends, family, or even new acquaintances. What used to be your time now seems to be replaced by other social circles or activities that don't involve you. They may become more eager to make plans with others and seem less interested in spending quality time with you. Their increased social engagements with others reflect their growing emotional distance from you. They may talk about these new experiences or relationships more frequently, while conversations with you become more shallow or infrequent. This change signals that they are starting to seek fulfillment and connection elsewhere, leaving less and less room for you in their life. The imbalance of time spent with you versus others can be a painful reminder that their emotional energy is no longer directed toward the relationship. Their focus has shifted, and as they immerse themselves in new dynamics, it becomes clearer that they've already moved on, even if they haven't openly admitted it. 6. They no longer express affection or appreciation. When someone stops expressing affection or appreciation, it's often a sign that they've emotionally checked out of the relationship. Early on, affection comes naturally, whether through kind words, gestures, or praise. But when their feelings start to fade, these small acts of care and appreciation become rare or disappear entirely. Instead of acknowledging your efforts, showing gratitude, or offering compliments, they may remain silent or indifferent. The warmth and recognition that once made you feel loved and valued are no longer present. This lack of appreciation is a subtle yet powerful indicator that their emotional attachment has waned. Without these expressions, the relationship feels distant and unfulfilling, leaving you wondering if they still care. As they withdraw, they stop noticing or acknowledging the things you do for them, leaving you feeling unnoticed and unimportant. The absence of affection can leave a void in the relationship, making it clear that their emotional investment has diminished. This shift is often a silent but significant sign that they have already moved on, even if they haven't directly said so. 7. They seem emotionally distant or detached. When someone has emotionally moved on, they often become noticeably distant or detached in their interactions. What was once a close, open connection now feels cold and impersonal. They stop sharing their thoughts, feelings, or experiences, creating a gap between you. Conversations that used to be deep or intimate now feel shallow, and there's a noticeable lack of emotional engagement from their side. They may seem disengaged during moments that would normally foster closeness. They may not respond to your emotional needs with the same care or attention they once did, leaving you feeling isolated. This emotional detachment reflects their inability or unwillingness to connect with you on a deeper level. They no longer seek comfort or validation from you, and their responses may feel robotic or indifferent. This shift in emotional availability is often subtle but powerful. It leaves you feeling as if you're trying to engage with someone who is no longer fully present in the relationship. The emotional distance they create signals that their attachment has loosened, and they are no longer as invested in maintaining the bond that once existed. 8. They don't talk about your relationship anymore. When someone has emotionally moved on, they often stop talking about the relationship altogether. Conversations that once included future plans, dreams, or discussions about how the relationship was growing or evolving become non-existent. They no longer bring up important moments you've shared or talk about your bond in the way they once did. This shift is noticeable because in a healthy, emotionally invested relationship, there's usually ongoing dialogue about the connection, whether it's about things you've experienced together, feelings, or plans for the future. But when those discussions stop, it's an indication that they've mentally and emotionally disconnected from the relationship. The absence of these conversations may make you feel as though your relationship has lost significance to them. They may no longer check in about how you're feeling or ask for your thoughts on important issues, signaling that they are no longer emotionally present or interested in nurturing the bond. This silence about the relationship suggests that they've moved on, even if they haven't explicitly said so. 9. They make excuses to avoid serious conversations. When someone has moved on emotionally, they often make excuses to avoid serious conversations about the relationship. What used to be discussions about your feelings, future plans, or any issues you are facing together now becomes a topic they actively avoid. They might deflect, change the subject, or even dismiss your concerns when you try to initiate a deeper conversation. Instead of addressing important matters, they'll often find a way to make light of the situation or avoid it altogether, saying things like, "I'm too tired to talk right now," or "We can discuss this later," only for that moment to never come. Their reluctance to engage in these conversations reflects their disinterest in resolving any issues or addressing the emotional needs of the relationship. This avoidance is a clear sign that they no longer want to invest time or energy into understanding or improving the relationship. The more they make excuses to avoid serious talks, the more it becomes evident that they're no longer emotionally connected or invested in making the relationship work. 10. They stop showing interest in your life or updates. When someone has moved on emotionally, they stop showing interest in your life or updates. In the past, they might have been eager to hear about your day, your accomplishments, or any challenges you were facing. But as their feelings change, they no longer ask how you're doing or seem engaged when you share details about your life. What used to be a natural exchange of information now feels one-sided, as they no longer take the time to inquire about your thoughts or experiences. When you share something important or exciting, they might give short, uninterested responses, or worse, completely ignore what you've said. This lack of curiosity about your life is a subtle but powerful sign that their emotional investment has dwindled. They may still be physically present, but are no longer mentally or emotionally engaged. The absence of genuine interest in your well-being or updates signals that they have emotionally detached, no longer feeling the desire to connect with you on a deeper level. This disengagement can be one of the clearest indicators that they have moved on from the relationship.